Hey guys, it's me, Christopher, and welcome back to yet another Lyoko book reading. And this time, we're hopefully gonna get to the last of the chapters today, if not later soon. Hopefully we'll be at the end of book 1, and I just cannot wait to get started on this video. So, let's start going on.
15 Eva Skinner, California, United States of America, January 9th. It was almost midnight on the last day of vacation. Vacation. The word crossed her mind as an annoying itch. It was the thought of another Eva, one imprisoned in a peripheral zone of her brain. The new Eva had taken a bus into downtown Berkeley, the center of the city. She had sat in silence for the entire journey, listening to the other passengers talking, people who were returning home from work, women with shopping bags, children carrying rucksacks. When the majority of the passengers disembarked, Eva had done the same. She unhurriedly continued by foot, still listening attentively. She soon discovered that in downtown Berkeley there was a station for the BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit, an important transportation route in the district. A lady had said that the BART went as far as San Francisco. She wondered if France was nearer than San Francisco. The crowd was thinning out, little by little. Eva had expected this. It was, as the humans put it, getting late. There were few people left on the wide streets that ran between the brick-colored buildings. She had to make inquiries with them. She rose from the bench where she had been sitting immobile for the past 2 hours and turned back towards the BART station. She saw a man in a black uniform, with a baton affixed to his belt. Shortly beforehand, she had seen a lady stop a person wearing the same uniform to ask him for information, referring to him as an officer. Therefore the men in uniform were there to provide information. "Pardon me, officer," she said, using the same words she had heard the lady use. "Sure, little lady," he answered with a smile. He was tall and had a prominent stomach that was straining the buttons of his uniform, a few gray hairs on his head and a thick mustache. "Pardon me," Eva repeated mechanically. "Information? What did you say?" The officer starched his head, perplexed. "Do you need information?" Eva nodded. This was going quite well. She tried to smile. "Where is France?" "The Hotel France. I've never heard of it. Are your parents staying there?" "No." She had failed to make herself understood. She repeated herself. "Where is France?" "France, French." The cop's eyes boggled. "France in Europe," he laughed. "And you want to try and reach that on the BART? Ha, ha. This is a Metropolitan line, kiddo. You want to go down to San Francisco and then catch a plane. The airport, do you get me? To fly. France is on the other side of the world." Eva nodded. She understood airport and knew what an aircraft was. But the concept of, on the other side of the world, was evading her. "Airport," she repeated, displaying another smile and indicating the station behind her. The policeman shook his head, concerned. "You're not with your parents, are you?" "No," Eva replied. She was not concerned, and had not even the slightest idea as to what the man was referring to. "What's your name?" "Eva." "Eva what?" "Eva Skinner." "And you're completely alone, Eva Skinner?" The policeman sighed resignedly, then smiled and took her hand. "Come on then. I'll accompany you to San Francisco Airport, and then you can show me where your parents are." "Okay, kiddo." He pointed towards his car, black with white doors. On the roof was a long blue light, currently extinguished. "Thank you," she answered mechanically. And she climbed in. On the way she studied how the strange vehicle was piloted. It seemed simple. All that was required was to push a lever into a starting position, and then press one pedal for acceleration, and the other to brake. They were now moving hurriedly between tens of other cars. The light over their heads had illuminated and now drove back the surrounding darkness with intermittent blue flashes. The officer picked up a strange device with his free hand and began to speak into it. "Robertson to Central. I have in my custody one Eva Skinner, female juvenile of 12, maybe 13 years of age. She seems to be lost, and was found alone at downtown Berkeley station. I am escorting her to Central Airport." Eva protested, tugging on his arm. The officer smiled at her. "Sure kiddo, I'll take you there later. But beforehand we need to do some research, do you see?" A voice crackled inside the small box. "Roger Robertson. Should we call in child services for this?" "That'd be perfect. Let's get this sorted quickly." Eva frowned. Things were no longer proceeding as planned. She had to reach France and had already wasted enough time. "Stop." "What?" "Stop. Here. I will get out. Don't even start thinking like that girl. Now we're going to Central where you'll be taken good care of while a nice lady asks you some questions." Lies, she thought. The way he was speaking sounded decidedly dishonest. "Stop." Eva cried. Hey, girl. Calm down right now," the policeman protested, looking intensely at her. Eva's arm schemed over his. And the car slowed down abruptly. The officer had passed out immediately, and was now curled up on the back seat of the police cruiser. Eva, sitting in the driver's seat, took the small box between her hands. "Robertson to Central," she called. Out of her mouth came a voice identical to the officer's. Slightly hoarse, mellow. "Adult. Central here. You still having problems with the girl?" Eva turned to look at the unconscious policeman behind her. "No," she answered, her perfect white teeth revealing themselves as she smiled. "Everything's fine." False alarm. "Where's the airport?" "Officer Robertson, are you trying to be funny? You'd have to cross the Bay Bridge to San Francisco and then follow the signs. Now if you're done joking, bring that girl into Central. And then go get some sleep. Seems to me you've taken one shift too many today." Signs. So there were signs. And she had to follow them. Perhaps they moved quickly. Perfect. She disconnected the conversation. Then, softly singing a little ditty, Eva crushed the accelerator pedal beneath her foot. 16 A brush with the law, Central France, January 9th, tickets please. The conductor was a tall and severe-looking gentleman, with pronounced cheekbones over which his pale skin was drawn tight in a long, outstretched neck. On his perfectly ironed and creaseless uniform there was attached a badge that declared his name, Monsieur Jules Tatelon. Jeremy extracted his phone from a pocket and recited to the man their booking code. Before explaining their situation, "We had actually booked places on the next train, but we arrived at the station early and decided to catch this service. Is it possible for our tickets to be transferred?" "Of course." Mr. Tatelon checked his palm-held computer. Then he abruptly looked up. "Am I much mistaken, or are you all underage?" His voice was cool. Impersonal. Jeremy hesitantly nodded. "Well, you see," continued the conductor. "This is very strange. These tickets have been booked in the name of one Jean-Pierre Delmas. Is he any of you?" The truth is, well, you see," Jeremy tried to explain. But the conductor suddenly cut him off. "I thought as much. He has in fact paid with his credit card, and you're too young to own one of those. And if he's accompanying you, where is he?" "No one is accompanying us," Odd intervened, indignantly. "We're old enough to travel alone." "So says you." "Look sir, the other conductor didn't have any problems with us." Mr. Tatelon sighed. "Unfortunately, not all of my colleagues apply the rules as firmly as they should. But that's no concern of mine. Might I inquire who this Mr. Delmas who purchased the tickets is?" "He's the principal of our school. And isn't an educational authority forbidden from allowing minors to travel alone outside of daylight hours, and am I correct in thinking you should be in school in a few hours?" "We're on a mission," Jeremy tried to cut in. "On behalf of our school." Mr. Tatelon made an amused grimace. But there was nothing cheerful in his forced smile. "Oh, I can quite imagine." He began to write on a large notepad. "What are you going to do?" "Why, contact the next station, naturally. We'll arrive there in about 12 minutes. There you'll be placed in the custody of transport police, who will contact your parents and headmaster, and try to get to the bottom of this." "But you can't do that," implored Odd in a weak voice. "Oh, I can, young man. And if I was in your position, I would hope that your parents have no idea of what's happened and that you had this bright idea all by yourselves. If that's not the case, this could be interpreted as a declaration of child abandonment." This said, Mr. Tatelon clicked his heels together and set off down the carriage. "Where are you going now?" asked a pale Yumi. "To finish my rounds," the man answered quietly. but don't worry, when the train stops I'll be back to escort you off it. Oh man, my mother always told me I'd end up in prison. Odd grieved, once the infernal conductor had disappeared into the next carriage. Jeremy, this is your fault. We should never have used that credit card. That man is mad. How did you think you could pass yourself off as an escort of minors? Gah. Guys, this is my responsibility, Jeremy apologized. It's not a question of responsibility, the police. Do you understand? The police. Prison Odd repeated despondently. Calm down Odd, we won't go to prison. We're underage. The worst that can happen is that the principal suspends us from school. Suspended? And which of us gets to tell him, that's enough? Elida screamed. The group fell silent immediately and stared fixedly at her. Quarreling isn't going to do us any good, the girl added, shaking her hair about. Right now we need to think of what to do next. We could escape. What? Jump off the train. And knock ourselves back to the 14th century. When they ask us to get off the train we could refuse. Yeah, and that would end with them genuinely arresting us. The real problem was Elida. Jeremy and the others had created a fictitious identity for her. But if the police did any research into their backgrounds, then the framework that they had so skillfully built would be quickly shaken apart. The 12 minutes that separated them from their fate crept by with agonizing slowness. Eventually, the train pulled into the science fiction-like station of Lyon Saint-Exupéry. It was a gigantic steel and glass structure, curved into soft and wavy lines, which in the center rose into a kind of wing. From inside powerful lights illuminated the surrounding environment like day. Somebody cleared their throat from behind them, Tatalon. Children, end of the line. As they stepped onto the platform they saw a small buggy had arrived, like one that might be used on a golf course. On the little machine's white and blue bodywork was written the word police. Driving it was a uniformed young man with a tired look about him, short-cut fair hair, and a nose that all by itself managed to fill 3/4 of his face. I am Officer Roger Crane, he presented himself. There you are. These are the children, Mr. Tatalon said in greeting. Then he lowered his voice, in confidence, Officer, I would not be surprised if they had stolen the credit card and used it for goodness knows what else. They don't have particularly trustworthy faces. We're standing right here, you know. Jeremy interrupted resentfully. Tatalon continued, and as for that boy there, he indicated Odd. When he started protesting that I could not call the police, I was concerned that he was about to attack me. The friends looked incredulously at one another. What breed of conductor had they encountered? Look, that's just nuts. Yumi burst out. Tatalon raised an eyebrow. See what I mean? He murmured, turning away to face the officer. It's not a problem, Roger Crane assured him. And come to think of it, you'd best be off. In exactly 1 minute and 20 seconds, Tatalon said, glancing at his watch. I certainly can't make the train depart in advance of the timetable. Seated in the back of the mini police car, the children looked around as they were paraded through the main concourse. The station served the adjacent Lyon Saint-Exupéry airport, and even though it was late at night, the loudspeakers crackled continuously, announcing departing trains and planes, and crowds of people were moving en masse on either side. Businessmen, carrying suitcases, and with newspapers rolled up under their arms, were drinking coffee at a bar as if it was the middle of the day. The office parked up outside a great sliding door decorated with the police coat of arms and gestured for them to enter. He led them into a small room. It was empty except for a pair of chairs leaning against the wall. Then he left, locking the door behind him. Well, now what do we do? Asked Jeremy. We wait, grumbled Ulrich. They had no other options. The room was sealed and windowless. Air circulation was provided by two little A/C gratings set almost at ceiling height, and so small that it would have been difficult to fit even a hand inside them. Odd fell asleep on one of the chairs, his head resting against the wall. Elida squatted down on the floor, her face hidden between her knees. They were left alone as time passed by. The door creaked open sometime around 1:30 in the morning, and Officer Crane poked his head in. All right, follow me. They were ushered into another room, furnished with only a little writing desk, cluttered with paperwork, and a chair on which the office sat, leaving them to stand. The man took a pen and a blank form and said, Now, in order, I want you to give me your names. The five held their heads low. The policeman smiled. Well, Based on the facts available to me, I'll supply you with my version of what I believe has happened here, he said, using the tone of an older brother. You all thought that since it was the last day of the holidays you should all take a little trip together. You've told your parents a load of poppycock, claiming that he indicated Ulrich would be sleeping at his house, he indicted towards Jeremy and he at your house. You've taken a ride on a fantastic ultra-fast TGV, but were nabbed by that boring old man Tatalon and so, here you are. Now, if you tell me your names, I'll phone your parents, you'll each receive a lovely scolding, and we can all go home to bed. He paused. If however, you remain silent, I'll be forced to shut you up in there again and contact social services. The case will pass into the beautiful world of official proceedings and you'll all risk ending up in front of a juvenile judge. And after all of that is done, then you'll give your names. And your parents will be much angrier, I can promise you that. Jeremy Belpoise, Jeremy began, keeping his head lowered. Ulrich's turn. Yumi Ishiyama. Elida, Stones. Adela Rabia. Roger Crane seemed satisfied. Well done kids. Now, let's put together the full story of how you came to be here. And above all else I want to know about this credit card addressed to one Jean-Pierre Delmas. When they had finished the story the policeman remained silent for a while. When he eventually spoke there were no reproachful tones in his voice. But the intent could be felt. Powerfully, like a stab to the chest. Do you know what it's called, what you've committed? Jeremy muttered something. I didn't hear that, you'll have to speak up. Theft. Correct. And do you believe that's something admirable? No sir. I made a mistake and I'm ashamed of it. I'd very much hope so, Roger the officer reaffirmed. He stretched his legs and put his feet up on the desk. One of the mountains of paperwork fell onto the floor, but the young man seemed unconcerned. Then someone knocked on the office door and, an instant later, another man let himself in. He was the spitting image of the police officer, but was several years younger and had long hair, partially hidden by a comical green hat fitted with a visor. His face was softened by a good-natured expression. Roger, he greeted. Renee, the newcomer looked towards the group. Do you still have much to do? Honestly bro, I couldn't say. Well I wanted to let you know that I'm heading off. I thought you wanted a lift to Ma's house by tomorrow morning. Roger Crane checked the time. It is pretty late. He drummed a pencil on the surface of the desk. Then he thoughtfully regarded the 5 youths. One thing still isn't clear to me. Could you share why you took it upon yourselves to make such a long train journey? And at night no less. It was my fault, Elida stepped forward. She told them everything, that her father had died, how they'd found the sack of mortar and had chased up the building company, and had gone to visit the contractor in the hope of finding some information. She neatly skipped over all the parts concerning Lyoko and the secret room. Roger and Renee Crane sat listening in fascination throughout the story. And even if the policeman did not buy into the whole of it, he at least acted like he believed them. He took the form on which he had been scribbling on up to that point and said, You see kids, I could now phone your parents and wake them up in the middle of the night. They will be frightened, they will be angry, and they'll wonder if they've misplaced their trust in you. And the weight of your mistakes will become their burden to bear. And that would just be the start of it, do you see? But instead, you've all had a good scare, you now understand what it's like to be held in a police station, and I'd hope that you've now got no desire to repeat the experience. Oh, absolutely not, Odd confirmed, shaking his head vigorously. You're all kids, Renee Crane ruled. And kids do stupid things. When we were your age, we did the same. Roger shot a reproachful glance at his brother, but his eyes were smiling. So, I've had an idea. And that is, to put it short, this one time, I'll let you go, and so spare your poor parents multiple cardiac arrests. But, in 2 days' time I'll contact the principal of your school, inform him that we're concerned about fraudsters in the area, and we'll ask him to check his credit cards. If the money has been returned to his account before that time, then there's been no theft and we can all rest easy. But if not, he looked at Jeremy and added, well, if your friend here is clever enough with computers to withdraw money from an educational account without being detected, then I'm sure he knows how to pay it back in as well. I'll do it first thing tomorrow morning, sirs. Alright then. Now hit the road and get out of here. I don't want to see any more of you. Skedaddle. The group remained immobile, standing on their feet in the center of the room. I said shoo. Now it was Ulrich who chose to speak for the group. There's just one small problem, officer. How do we, now, get ourselves home? Ah yes, admitted Crane. You've now missed the last train. And, of course, you can't make the trip on foot. He tapped momentarily on the top of the desk. Then he looked towards his brother, who was still waiting expectantly. What do you say? I say we deliver them with the post. The station car park was illuminated by street lamps that cast yellow-orange cones of light on the thin mantle of snow. Roger Crane had stamped his time card, changed clothes, and was now wearing a pair of velvet trousers and a thick overcoat. Despite this, he still managed to convey the serious attitude of a policeman, and Jeremy now understood what books meant when they described someone as having the face of a cop. Evening, officer, greeted a taxi driver who was smoking a cigarette and leaning on the door of his car while waiting for a fare. Hi Tom. What's the deal with these kids then? Have you arrested them? Are they beginning their sentences? Tom chortled. Actually, these are highly dangerous criminals. I'm transporting them to be incarcerated in the cooler. Ha. On a night like this, it's hardly necessary. Roger Crane led on, rotating his position among the 5 youths. Then the headlights of a large van cut through the night as it pulled up a short distance from them. The imposing vehicle was colored a dirty white. Along the sides, in complicated serif font characters, was written, "The INVE Stigator." But that's one of our city's newspapers. Yumi said, recognizing it. Crane nodded. Yes, but they print it here. And my brother is one of the drivers who deliver fresh editions to the news agents. This is his van, your passage home. Great. We'll arrive in the city around 5 in the morning. What do you mean by we'll arrive? Asked Ulrich. Officer Crane yawned. I'm coming too. I promised my mother that I would drop in and say hello to her. Renee jumped down from the van. You kids, I'm sorry to say, will have to be comfortable with riding in the back with the newspapers. There's only room for one of you in the cab. The van's back doors opened, revealing pile upon pile of fresh daily newspapers. The investigator heading printed on each copy in large red characters was still damp. A political cartoon featuring the caricature of a local politician dominated the front pages. So you'll have plenty to read along the way, Renee smiled. Even though it will be pretty dark. And cold, I'm afraid. But if you tell each other some stories, I'm sure time will pass by much quicker. So, which of you will ride up front with me and Roger? One of the girls, perhaps. There was a flash of light in Elita's eyes. No thank you, I'm more interested in the stories, she answered hurriedly. Well, commented Renee. Stories are the best things in life. Do you want to come then? He said to Yumi. I understand that my brother is not the best of company, but I'm nice enough. And it's warmer in the cab. Yumi laughed. Gladly, thank you. We're agreed then. The stowaways with the newspapers, and the girl up front. We're set. But Yumi had to endure Roger recounting to his brother the entire story of the pedantic conductor, which Renee still didn't know about. Seated in the van's passenger compartment between the two brothers, she became more and more ashamed. The windscreen wipers flicked back and forth, brushing ribbons of light on the glass. They were merging with the autoroute, the northbound motorway. I'll confide a secret in you, whispered Roger in the tones of an accomplice. My brother is a great thriller writer. Really, are you serious? Now Yumi was genuinely interested. Renee shook his head, embarrassed. Let's just say that I'm working on it. But, if you're really interested, I can say that in my next book the murderer is a printer, one of the people who publish the daily newspapers. Are you just messing with me? Asked Yumi distrustfully. I would never allow myself. Here, I'll describe the first scene. A beautiful young woman meets this stranger, the printer, in a bar. He takes her to see the place where he works. And there's these gigantic machines, right? They receive from computers all the data of the articles they are to print, and then snorting and puffing, they set themselves into motion. Great rollers start turning with monstrous strength. At a certain point, the girl tells the printer that she would love to end up on the front page. He gives her a push and she does indeed, end on the front page. You understand? BRRRRR commented Yumi. Renee, I think this little miss has gone through quite enough emotional stress for today, commented Roger, smiling. Moving along, I found the information you were asking me for. Perfect. Fire away. Well, I've discovered that there's an entire science devoted to different invisible inks, Roger continued. From the classic lemon juice, to complex chemical compounds. Anyway, in the police archives I found an interesting example that you could use in the final scene. Brilliant, Renee exulted. Okay, have you ever heard of potassium ferrocyanide? Renee put a piece of chewing gum in his mouth and passed the pack to Yumi. No, explain. You create an 8% solution of ferrocyanide, and then you bathe the tip of a pen in it and write with it on a sheet of normal white paper. The writing will be perfectly invisible, but if you then paint the sheet with a solution of iron nitrate, then, BAM. The letters will appear, one by one, in a delicate pale blue color. That's just perfect, big brother. Yeah, it seems like it was quite a popular method a few years back. It's simple to prepare, and iron nitrate is quite common. Yumi's head had begun to bob sleepily. The cab of the van was quite warm, and the conversation was somewhat over her head. And it was very late at night. Almost without realizing it, the girl closed her eyes and slipped into a restless sleep. Initially they had thought that riding in the cargo compartment of a van would be quite poetic. After 2 minutes, it was still poetic but somewhat uncomfortable. After another 10, they understood that this would be a hellish journey. The columns of stacked newspapers took up all the available space and, even if they cleared an area towards the back, bone-freezing drafts were entering under the closed loading doors. Besides, the fresh ink was staining their hands and clothes, and the smell of it was strong enough to stifle their breathing. Odd already had the word investigator imprinted on his jacket and trousers. There were no seats. Every pothole caused the group to start and jolted them from side to side. What a journey, Odd lamented to himself for the millionth time. And here was me hoping to catch 40 winks. Ulrich was almost invisible in the gloom. I'm just thanking our lucky stars that things have gone this well. Yes, Elita concurred. It was lucky that Crane's brother arrived when he did. He was able to disperse some of the tension. It's all my fault, apologized Jeremy, also for the millionth time. Another pothole. They lost their balance and fell against a column of papers that reached as high as the roof plating. It took several minutes to restore order. I hope no one else ever learns about this, Ulrich sighed. Oh, certainly not. Our epic journey will forever remain a secret, I swear it. Me too. After some time, Odd added, you know, sleeping like this really is impossible. We'd be better off taking advantage of this to finish our video diary. That's what I was hoping you would say, admitted Elita. I've got a sense that there are still things that I need to know. Jeremy fussed with his jacket and managed to extract the camcorder. He turned it on and the inbuilt screen shone blue for a moment in the dark. He shook his head. We won't be able to film anything in here. It doesn't have infrared capacity. That's no loss, consoled Ulrich. The audio will be enough. And the important thing is that it will help us pass the time. The important thing is that you tell me everything, every detail, corrected Elita. So, what happened after you brought me back into the real world?
Well, that seemed to be kind of interesting. So, anyway, one handle into the law and into the net. And I guess we're gonna be figuring out the next part of Lyoko in the next episode. I swear we're getting to the end of this, but otherwise it's just gonna be one long book series. I swear it's gonna be finished. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Comment and subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you later.